Night settles over a small timber town in Washington. The rain begins the way it always does. Soft at first, then steadier, drumming on roofs and sliding down windshields in neat, obedient trails. Only this time the water doesn't behave. Wipers smear instead of clear. Porch lights pick out something suspended in the downpour. Tiny, translucent grains that don't splash so much as land. By morning, lawns and sidewalks wear a thin, quivering skin. If you press a fingertip into it, it depresses, not like slush, not like hail, more like unset gelatin. The town will give it a name, the Blobs. And once named, it will ask a question that refuses to leave. What exactly fell from the sky? In this episode, we reconstruct what fell on Oakville on August 7th, 1994, what the tests actually found, and why a final verdict still won't stick. The date is August 7th, 1994. The place is Oakville, a quiet community hemmed by forest and fields. After the storm rolls through, people step outside to a scene that feels familiar but wrong. Driveways glisten with a sheen that clings to boots. Garden tools wear a sticky film. A police cruiser's windshield looks varnished, and the more the officer tries to wipe it clean, the more it smears into milky streaks. Some residents say they felt ill, nausea, dizziness, a heaviness behind the eyes. Pets sniff and lick, and a few are said to sicken. It isn't proof of cause and effect. It is, however, enough to coil worry around almost every conversation in town. What makes a mystery grow is not always the event itself. It's what happens next. People collect samples in jars and plastic bags. They label dates and times, holding the evidence up to the light as if the answer might be etched into the shine. Word spreads from porch to porch, then from county to county, and suddenly a small-town anomaly is a regional story with national curiosity. Just when anxiety begins to taper, more reports arrive. It happened again. Another shower, another thin film. Not one odd night, but several, separated by days. Each retelling sharpens the edges. Each new claim adds weight to the feeling that something out of the ordinary is repeating itself. In a case like this, the lab bench becomes the courtroom. One route of the samples passes through a hospital technician's microscope. There, a report surfaces of something that looks like white blood cells. If true, a hint that the blobs might be biological tissue. That single detail is gasoline on the rumor mill. But science is a relay race, not a solo sprint. The baton passes to state health investigators, who test what they have with the tools at hand. Their reports don't confirm human white blood cells. Instead, they note common bacteria, organisms encountered in soil, plant surfaces, and water. Other labs later say they saw eukaryotic cells, cells with nuclei found in plants and animals, without declaring a clear source. A scientist with another agency mentions cells of different sizes, again suggesting once living material. What emerges is not consensus, but noise, same jars, different slices, different methods, conflicting impressions. Explanations arrive in flurries. The first almost always aims upward, aircraft waste. In popular imagination, airplanes are to blame whenever unpleasant things fall from the sky. But the typical signature of a toilet system leak is a chemical dye and a distinct color, and what residents described here was clear. Even if the rulebook says in-flight dumping isn't allowed, accidents do happen, but the color issue lingers, a small but stubborn mismatch. The second theory arrives with a flourish: jellyfish. Military exercises offshore were common in that era, and one idea holds that explosions might have shredded a bloom of jellyfish, lofting fragments skyward to drift inland and precipitate out during a storm. It is cinematic in all the ways a television producer might love. Ocean mysteries, military secrecy, and a town coated in sea life. Yet the air is cruel to soft tissue. To turn a massive jelly into an aerosol, carry it miles, then condense it into uniform, pearl-like granules that survive the trip and arrange themselves across driveways and roofs, is a feat that strains both physics and probability. Without direct marine markers and a wind model that actually works, the jellyfish explanation sits more in the realm of clever story than sober mechanism. Older than airplanes and exercises is folklore. Star jelly, a slippery residue that country people have whispered about for centuries. After rain or meteors or fog, someone finds a clear or milky gel on grass or stone and declares the heavens have shed a skin. Modern biology answers with humbler suspects. Certain algae and cyanobacteria can desiccate, then swell into jelly when rehydrated. Some slime molds perform a version of the same trick. Could Oakville's blobs be a ground-level bloom, reanimated by moisture and mistaken for fallout? Maybe. But witnesses insist they saw the material in the rain, coating surfaces as it fell, not just reconstituted on the ground after. Without photographs of droplets mid-air, without a direct chain from cloud to clump, the debate becomes a contest between memory and mechanism, and memory, especially after a strange night, can be treacherous. A fourth explanation is less glamorous, but more elastic. An environmental aerosol loaded with organic material. Forests, farms, compost heaps, and coastal air all contribute microbial and plant matter to the atmosphere. Under the right conditions, particles ride thermal currents, meet moisture, and descend. It's easy to imagine a storm wringing out a cocktail of dust, pollen, spores, and bacteria, but imagination must meet texture. The Oakville material is described not as grit, dust, or mud, but as gel. If organic particles needed a carrier to clump, sea salt crystals, for example, the gelled feel still begs for a binding agent. Again, the evidence returns us to the jar. Whatever the goo was, we needed more of it handled better, sooner, by more than one method. The human element in Oakville is as instructive as the meteorology. When an event feels uncanny, the body listens too closely to itself. Symptoms that might otherwise be folded into the day, an unsettled stomach, a dull headache, suddenly feel like part of the narrative. One woman's doctor attributes her vertigo to an inner ear issue unrelated to the rain. Others report flu-like malaise, which could be seasonal viruses, stress, suggestion, or a genuine response to something environmental. The only way to sort perception from causation is with careful, controlled comparisons. Who had contact? Who didn't? Who got sick? Who stayed well? In a small town during a short window, no such study was feasible, The gap doesn't prove there was no effect. It simply means we cannot measure one. What undermines many mysteries isn't a cover-up. It's attrition. By the time the most interesting questions surface, are there human cell markers, marine DNA, industrial polymers? The best samples are portioned out, degraded, misplaced, or consumed. Chain of custody notes run thin. A lab's tentative observation becomes, in the retelling, a conclusion. Another lab's negative becomes a dismissal of the entire line of inquiry. The clock that matters most is the one ticking on the sample jar. Without rapid, standardized tests and redundant storage, evidence thins faster than curiosity. Yet curiosity keeps the story alive. Years pass, and the town's odd summer survives in retellings, late-night programs, and online threads. The details evolve in small ways with each cycle. Numbers harden. How many incidents? How many people ill? Theories acquire sharper edges. In the absence of a decisive test, the Oakville Blobs become what so many great mysteries become: a mirror. If you prefer the rational and terrestrial, you see an unusual presentation of common environmental materials amplified by perception, stress, and the hunger for explanation. If you're inclined toward the rare and extraordinary, you see a narrow doorway into phenomena that resist easy categories, whether biological, military, or meteorological. Both impulses, the skeptical and the wonderstruck, are understandable. Both honor the same feeling, that the world still has corners we don't quite recognize, and when those corners brush against our routines, the edges feel sharp. Strip the story down, and what remains is a set of stubborn facts. A storm swept over Oakville. In its wake, residents found a clear, gelatinous substance that behaved unlike ordinary rain. Multiple events were reported over a short span. People and animals were said to have fallen ill. Samples were tested. Some found bacteria that are not unusual in the environment. Others reported cells consistent with once living material. No definitive human origin was established, and every potential explanation, from airplane leaks to ocean life to folklore to bioaerosols, bumped against mismatches it couldn't fully absorb. The result is not so much a conclusion as a silhouette, the outline of an answer without the detail to fill it in. That silhouette is the territory where good storytelling and honest investigation can meet. You can feel the pull of neat endings, the kind delivered in a final minute with swelling music and a title card that says, "Case closed." Oakville doesn't offer that. It offers something harder and, in its way, more valuable. It teaches how fragile evidence can be when events outpace process. It shows what happens when samples aren't archived and cross-checked, when initial impressions calcify, when memory becomes the mortar that holds a tale together. It reminds us that doubt isn't a defect in a mystery story. It's the oxygen that keeps inquiry burning. Verdict: most consistent with an unusual presentation of common environmental material amplified by perception. Yet gaps in sampling and custody keep a definitive answer out of reach. Until then, Oakville sits in that peculiar gallery of late 20th century puzzles that are neither hoaxes nor solved problems. Events that happened, that left marks and memories, and that outlived the evidence required to pin them down. Stand again under the streetlight in a hard rain. Watch the cords of water thread the night. Tiny particles ride them. Pollen, dust, sea salt, spores. Most nights, the factory of the sky manufactures nothing more dramatic than weather. On a few nights, it manufactures stories. In Oakville, in the summer of 1994, it made one that won't wash off. The rain returns to its usual rhythm. Windshields clear the way they should. Lawns drink as they always have. But for those who were there, and for those who meet the town through retellings, that season refuses to fade. It is a reminder that the familiar is thin, that a thin film can be enough to tilt a life sideways for a week or a lifetime, and that the best mysteries are not the ones we solve instantly, but the ones that sharpen our tools. Whatever the blobs were, ordinary materials doing an uncommon impression, or a rare event we haven't catalogued, their most enduring residue is not gelatin, it's humility. The kind that says the sky can still surprise us, and that our explanations, like the rain, should be clear when they can be, and patient when they cannot. And so the town goes quiet again. The storm drains hiss. The last beads of water slide from cedar needles and disappear into the dark. What happened here happened. What it was remains open. In that open space between evidence and certainty, you can hear the pulse of a good story. It's the rhythm of rain and the sound of a question that won't stop falling. If you enjoyed this journey, hit subscribe, share your theory below, and join us next time on Vault of Forgotten Mysteries, where the past is never quite finished.